There is nothing like what you guys are doing right now. So what maybe a great place to start is, what did the origin process look like for you all? How did we get from kind of classic fairy tales to these very strange, very weird, and I say that all in a very positive way, of interpretations of
For whatever reason, I've always been fixated. I love horror, right? So that's the first thing. I love horror, and I've lived in this space as a fan and as a professional for forever. And I've always been fixated on two things, and it's been holidays and fairy tales, and always like the dark side of them.
it. Yeah.
And when I was young, I used to look up all the fairy tales, the original stories, and they were petrifying. They were
Mhm.
like so dark and nothing like everybody is experiencing through Disney. And so like it really just came back down to like the literal dark origins of these fairy tales were amazing. If you were into horror, like they were
Yeah,
more like horror stories,
for sure.
than they were like the stories that we all are used to now. And so I've always wanted to do create universes for around holidays and around fairy tales and um, I had the idea for Tales of the Woods, which was originally Scary Tales, always, which is working in the indie space. I love working with like unique filmmakers that have their own perspective. And when you work
Yeah,
in the indie space, yeah, and when you work in the indie space, like it's a global, like you get these great international movies. Like everyone has a unique voice, and sometimes when it's an international voice, it becomes even more unique, right, to a
yeah,
domestic audience. So, you know, it was always about wanting to do like an anthology series, whether it was a feature series or whether it was a short form series of just the dark origin versions of fairy tales. We have over time put together a Bible of 75 different fairy tales that, say the story that we know and then talk about the dark origins. Because even like the Grimm brothers, they didn't come up with those stories. That was their version
yeah,
of fairy tales that came hundreds of years before them.
yeah, for sure. Well, and I think that is kind of the genius of the series is it's not just kind of the dark and not just the grim version of things, but rather if we were using Jack and the Beanstalk, right? I think I was particularly pulled to that episode. My oldest son is Jack, and we used to, when he was in college now, but when he was a kiddo, like we would tell that, and he would always loved it, right? Because he's Jack, right? And I love that you pull in, a duo like Benson and Moorhead, who are just, I think, phenomenally gifted as storytellers, anyways, right? You give them this kind of creative power, not just to tell the dark version of that fairy tale, but what they do with I don't know, kind of the idea of this explorer. I think there's a lot of almost like manifest destiny that is kind of in that story. Like we when you go to the directors that you've been to, do you essentially pitch them the idea like, hey, I want to, we want to riff on this origin story, but try something different? Is there a different story? Is there something else that you want to take it? And I'd be curious to know what that conversation is
Yeah, I mean the conversation is pretty. I'm good with like concepts and ideas, but filmmakers are unbelievably creative and are at a
like. Hmm.
whole nother level of creativity in understanding their interpretation of what you're asking them to do. So quite
Yeah.
honestly, it was you know saying we gave them more choices, right? We had our directors, and out of our 75 fairy tales, we picked 10 of them, and we went and said, pick any one you want. Here's the dark origin. You have to embrace that, and because we were picking filmmakers that we liked their style and that we
Sure.
knew sort of how they were going to interpret things and how it was going to visually look, just because
Yeah.
they all have their own track record, they all have their own signature and the way that they tell a story on screen. So it was really just doing that and then making sure they understood the budget. And because that's here's the thing, it's not all filmmakers need, and short form content is very hard to do and do right and to do on a budget, because it's really like shooting a whole movie. You still have to
Yeah,
do all these things to do it right. It's just at this much more compressed time, so it's harder. And so I, I've always worked in the indie scene with indie filmmakers, and they really know how to get things done. They may be the
yeah,
director, but they're the writer. They are doing the lighting. They're
right.
with doing sandwich. They're doing everything, and they learn how to budget things. They learn how to get the most out of the money they have, so they could put it on screen. That's the
Yeah,
beauty with all these filmmakers. Everything they have goes up on screen. So we wanted to make sure that they had enough money to sort of be able to execute their specific vision. And we did ask them to do a couple things to just help us out a little bit, but never pull it in. And that's what we liked. And we did that with Holidays too, another short
yep.
anthology series, which is
Fantastic, fantastic. By the way, yeah, they're
thanks.
like some of my favorites.
Yeah, so it's about working with really, really talented filmmakers from all over the globe. But really, that's what it is, and giving them the opportunity to do their thing. Because in the indie, like you said, there's nothing else out there. We could have made it look like everything else, right?
Sure.
Like we could have told them exactly what to do and tell them, well, this is what is it's supposed to be, and this is what's working best. And it's more like you're great filmmakers that like make amazing stuff. We're
Yeah,
creating this universe and world. We want you to be part of it. These initial series are sort of thematically right here, go make it. And
yeah,
they did. And, even a lot of them know each other, from the
yeah,
festival scene. So that sort of was just sort of like a collaboration of giving them the canvas to do their painting,
yeah.
and help them at least stay on the canvas.
Sure. No, I think that makes a ton of sense, and kind of leads me to my big question. I like. I'm really lucky. I get to work with all these kids that like movies, but they don't understand why necessarily. So we had our big kind of brainstorming session yesterday because we're going to produce a short film, and I told them I want it to be good enough that we can enter it into a film festival, and then we can go to a board meeting and we could say, okay, I need you to find, enough money for these 10 kids to go to, Austin for Fantastic Fest or Montreal for Fantasia, whatever. And we were talking about jobs and roles. And I've always kind of seen my role as a teacher, as that kind of facilitator. And I can't help but think it is relatively close to that idea of a producer. So I was trying to talk to the kids, and like they understand director, they understand cinematographer, right? They understand sound and lighting and all those things. But it has always been hard for me to kind of like get them to wrap their heads around exactly what a good producer does. So maybe the question then is like, what do you see as your main function, right? Your most important contribution as a producer, either in a short film or an anthology like we have here, or whatever it may be.
So I mean, I've also run a bunch of genre divisions, right? So I've always had the same role, which is sort of a producer, right? When you're running, whether it's Orion or Blumhouse Tilt or any of those things, you're a producer. So your job is to facilitate, the vision that everyone's agreed upon going into it, and whether that's your vision as a creative producer or your vision more of like a producer that's going to be more operational. There's different types of producers out there. A creative producer is more about getting the idea and packaging and the vision. And then there's, the more operational producer, which is like, okay, let's make sure we can do it on budget. Here's the schedule. Here are the moving pieces. And, by heading up divisions and doing marketing, you have to do all that, right? You hope you
Yeah,
have a little
yeah,
insight to give the big picture, but then you have to put together a team of people that all have all these different responsibilities where you have to empower them to, carry out their responsibilities as it relates to the rest of the team, but still keep on top of them. So
yeah,
that's how I've always looked at things, whether it's running a marketing department or running a movie or doing anything, is like there's going to be one person in charge, and you want to put together as good a team as possible. And if that team revolves around your star player, which is the director, and it's his vision, then you just want to make sure everything is given to them to let them, if you agree with the vision going into it, to give them to execute what their vision is, as long as they're working in the parameters you're giving them. If
Yeah,
they
yeah,
start going outside of that and they're spending too much money or it's looking different, well, then things change a little bit. But it's just the
yeah,
same way as running a department, right? If people know how to function within their individual area, you give them an area to grow. If they don't, your job as a manager, of a sports team or a teacher
right.
or anybody is then sort of correct them. But always
Yeah,
give them that room so they can grow and want to be innovative and learn. And even if it's learning about something else, the best way to learn about something else is to be collaborative with other
yeah,
people on your team. So whether it's the classroom, whether it's a production of a movie, or whether it's the releasing company, it all sort of still functions that same way.
yeah. I think no, I like your description of that because as I was trying to answer the questions about kind of my role as producer, whatever, I was like, my job is to as much as I can to be the yes and guy, right? I really don't ever want to be the no guy. Obviously we have kind of structural barriers and all that kind of stuff, but my job is to try to figure out how we can get to yes, both as a community, but also in working with, the confines of
Yeah.
our limitations. So,
The
but
best way to win is to empower the people that are part
yeah.
of the experience, and
So,
keep
talk to me then, like how awesome is it to get to work with Benson and Moorhead or, Matty Doe, like all of these names that I think we know on the indie circuit, but also more importantly, we know as phenomenal filmmakers on their own right. When you gave them the idea, they obviously kind of bring you their vision, that kind of stuff. And so the first time that you view these short films, uh, what was that experience like? Can you see their kind of individual contributions? Because they
Oh
are
yeah,
way different, in tone, but also in look, you know?
that was, we wanted like there to be sort of like this sort of moral and social thematic connective tissue between the shorts, but we specifically wanted them to sort of almost be how it is where there are different points of time, right? Like, and so we made sure, and by the way, a lot of this is working with Adam Egypt Mortimer. I've worked with him for like 20 years on a lot of different things. So we're friends, and so he's in that world with a lot of the filmmakers maybe that I didn't know.
Okay.
So it made it a very collegiate vibe.
Yeah,
Everyone
yeah,
was sort of into making this whole thing work, and we picked people not to do, if we wanted to do 6 episodes that all look the same, we would just get the same director and say do 6 episodes. So we specifically tried to find filmmakers that maybe had their own different style, and that's why
yeah,
Adams wouldn't have worked if you did that from a colonialism perspective, but you put him in a futuristic
yeah. This
sort of that vibe,
post-apocalyptic, yeah,
and his vision and his skill set and his artistry work best for that, and
yeah,
so each one sort of picked the one that sort of uh, showcases their
yeah. Their
their
aesthetic or
yeah.
whatever, yeah. Well, and that I think what is so interesting about the three episodes that I've seen, like each of them approaches hero and villain from a different perspective, right? And this kind of, I think, a unique cultural vision. But I love that the villain in every single one of these short films is the person that has or the things that have the power, right? Like in the first, it is clearly this kind of colonial manifest destiny explorer, right? In Sleeping Beauty, it is clearly the people that have wealth and power and established connections to the politics of the day, and obviously the third is all about kind of wealth and an exploration of kind of I often use the term playfully, but like our stage capitalist hellscape, like it brings that to life. So talk to me, was that intentional, or are we like, we really want to tell stories about how power is used and wielded in sometimes unjust fashions, or did that just happen kind of by accident?
No, nothing. That's not by accident. I mean, that's sort of the space. That's the. I guess I'm showing my age, but I come from the indie punk time of music and
Yep.
anti-authority and shouting out and subversing, authority. So that's even any of the movies I've over my career sort of worked on, sort of all do that. And I think that's where that indie voice should always be able to be heard. So no, that was all on purpose, and their stories are all doing that. And even though it's doing it from a different, it's taken on the man, whatever that means for that individual time period that they are in, but it's definitely subverting, power and authority and trying to somehow take on authority is or
Yeah.
get it.
Well, and like a really important time to do that, right? Like,
You got to have a
you,
voice, and
yeah,
these and indie filmmakers have to have a voice. So one of the reasons that made it so easy for them all to come on board, a lot of them are doing some really big projects. Benson and Moorhead are doing Daredevil. They're doing big, big things, and they
yeah, right.
enjoyed this because no one was sort of telling them what to do, and they got to get their indie freak on without, and that's what they really are all about. Is this is
Sure.
their perspective, this is their vision, and I think that's what makes the series stand out because it is unique because it's not homogenized, it's not packaged, it's like a bunch of unique voices from different parts of the globe that are all doing the same homework assignment.
Yeah. Oh,
They're
I like it.
doing it their way.
Yeah, and I think that reads really well. You can't tell now. My kids that I teach don't believe it, but I had a big blue mohawk in college, and like age beats us down a little bit, and you learn to play some games you told yourself in college you'd never play, but you got to eat sometimes, But it's
I still got London Calling and Never Mind the Bullocks sitting right on the right of me, hung up on the wall and framed.
I love it. I love it. You probably can't tell because it's all blurred out, but I have a bunch of tattoos. And initially, I've been teaching for 22 years, and my building principal was not super jazzed about that, I think, at the beginning. But if you're
It's
doing good
awesome.
stuff, yeah,
It's about sharing your knowledge and making other people better, right? So
yeah.
it's cool. It's great.
Well, and I think that's exactly what this series is doing, right? It embraces all of those kind of cultural elements, and you know, as you said before, like I was what drew me to these short films were all of the like these are big name directors that are lending their name, their stories, their storytelling, and like what amazes me in all of it, if we go back to the Jack and the Beanstalk story, that is such a weird, strange interpretation that like it very much reminds me of like early Benson and Moorhead, where they're just gonna do some weird shit. We are gonna be along for the ride, and I think what a better place for it than a fairy tale where you're along for the ride no matter what, right? You're capturing that. So I don't want to keep it too long, but what are some we have more episodes planned, right? Do we have anything else anything else to add maybe to folks that might check this out, other directors, other stories we're trying to tell?
I think everyone should just stay tuned to what's going to come next because we really want to see, what's going on right now is they're playing in the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival, which is a fantastic,
Oh, it's
fantastic
so
festival.
good. It is fantastic.
I mean, a great audience, like just great, great, right? So all three of them are playing together tonight. Actually, probably the next couple hours, for the first time, all three are playing together in the same like pod, and
Yeah.
so Fantastic Fest was the first time that Sleeping Beauty and Jack played together. So now it's the three together, and we just want to sort of we want to see how people embrace them and react to them and figure out because our goal is to do an ongoing series of these just like holidays turned into the dark.
Yeah.
That was a 24 episode Hulu series, which each episode being an hour and a half. So that
Right. They
all
ended
came
up being
from
movies. Yeah.
the holiday universe that we were building out. the fairy tale universe, I started building this out for real with Oz Perkins when he did Gretel and Hansel when I was heading up Orion. What we were trying to do, and then the Orion was no longer a genre division, and but while it was a genre division, what I was trying to do was do a series of horror
Yeah,
features where there, like we had one on Pinocchio set up. We had like two or three of them set up. So I'm like, let me back into it like I did previously.
yeah,
Let's do it as a short series. Let's get these out there because there's such a great body of work, and the filmmakers love doing it. So, what we're going to do with Tales from the Woods is on the top of the year, hopefully be in a position with the streamer to, extend the series with the same sort of like cool indie vibe and stuff and be like
that,
thematic for each series.
yeah. Well, I love that you mentioned Hansel Gretel because now that I'm connecting
Gretel and
those
Hansel.
dots.
Gretel
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Hansel.
right. Yeah,
That was our
but
big shtick.
you can see the connection between the episodes that I've seen and that thing. I mean, it is like it's a direct line, right? Like that is, yeah. So that two final questions. I think you probably hinted at the answer to the second one, but the first one, I know they're all your babies. I know, it's like a student coming and asking me, what's your favorite student? But is there one of these episodes that is your favorite so far? And is there a fairy tale that, like, if you could get somebody to adapt that you haven't gotten yet, is there one that you're really, dying to see or really pushing for?
Well, we have 5 seasons of 8 episodes a season laid out.
Okay.
So there's a lot, but my two would be Red Riding Hood and Three Little Pigs.
All
That
right.
I'm very eager to do. We were going to do actually Red Riding Hood with a really great Indonesian director, and it was going to be super crazy and
Yeah.
much more in the tone of what Adam did. But he wasn't available. But we even wanted more of a range of the very visceral and moody, going all the way to the super violent. We wanted that whole space, so we didn't get necessarily where we wanted to there, but there, those are the two that I'm excited the most on a personal level to find the right director that could tell because the Red Riding Hood is a brutal, dark origin.
Oh,
One of the
oh,
most
it
brutal
can be.
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
one of the original stories. If you just go up, it's brutal. So finding the right director for Red Riding Hood and then Three Little Pigs, I just think is such a crazy tale that could also be fun from a more horror perspective.
yeah.
And
That
I don't. And as far as a favorite, that's hard because they all have their very unique style out of the three of them, and I love every single one of the directors. So I like each one of them for what they bring to it. Like,
yeah.
I, the Benson and Moorhead. I'm like just so happy they did their version of that because
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
asking your three favorite albums. It depends on like what type of music you're listening to at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I buy it.
Even though the replacements "Pleased to Meet Me" would be mine. Um,
Of course. Yeah.
but so it's like they're all great for their lane that they're in. So I can't pick a favorite, nor would I.
Fair. That's fair. How about that? I think your first answer kind of begs the question, though. Is there a dream director out there, like that you automatically know they're going to say yes? Is there a guy, gal, or a filmmaker of any kind that you're like, that is the dream one? I want to include them in this project.
There's
And if
six or eight of them.
okay,
Oh,
is there?
here's the thing that this is the beauty. There's so many amazing indie filmmakers out there that do amazing work and have time to do things because that's the other thing. We're not asking someone to give us 9 months, right? We're saying, could you give us 5 weeks? So even in between things, so it depends on when we get going. But no, there's so many great names out there, and just look at the last 5 years of any film festival and pick any 4 or 5 of your favorite movies, and you're like, oh my gosh, I wish they would do something. So there's a ton of of the names out there, and there's a good 8 to 10 that we want to work with. And the filmmakers that we already are working with are sort of our roster. So they're sort of our outreach. They evangelize
Yeah,
with us.
for
So it's sort
sure.
of like, I want them, they're part of it. Like we all talk about what we're doing, what we're going to do next. And, they have a lot of good um, names that they like. I'm like, oh my God, I never even thought about that. That would be great. So it's sort of like a collaborative thing to just make sure we get really cool, unique voices
I
that
get it.
are diverse in more than anything else, their storytelling, and not necessarily them, but how they tell their story. Because I think that's what sort of makes this fun is sort of they don't all feel the same.
Yeah. So, do you have any more episodes in the can, or is that kind of phase two?
Off the record,
So, last question. I'm so sorry to keep you over. Uh, so we should keep an eye out. We did a live podcast yesterday, and we had an exclusive clip that Steven sent us, and I appreciate that, Steven. Uh, but the audience were like, "Oh man, this is wild. Where can we watch it?" Right? And I was like, "I feel very confident it is going to be out from what I hear from the people somewhere at the beginning of 2026." Is that
yeah,
a
in
pretty
the first
fair?
quarter of 2026 is what we're shooting for.
Perfect. Great. Well, I cannot wait for everyone to see the crazy, bizarre world that you have helped create, John. It is remarkable, and you should be commended. I love that we are doing this work. So, thank you so much for taking a little bit of your time and letting us check out this really great stuff.
Tyler, thank you very much. It was really nice meeting you.
Yes,
It's a
you too.
really, really fun conversation, and I look forward to continuing it. And thank you for your time and support.
Absolutely. All right. Good luck at Brooklyn Horror Fest. Hopefully it works out.
Thanks. I'll see you. Thanks
All
again.
right.
All right.
Take
Thanks,
care,
guys.
guys.